Welcome back for another edition of the Final Mile. It's our Q&A session with you guys. So we've pulled some good questions this week from a variety of our online community sources, and make sure to send your question our way. A lot of times it's through a YouTube comment. Gotten a lot of mixed feedback on some recent content we've done, some lovers and some haters. Helps the algorithm, so feel free to shoot us some hate messages there. It just helps us even more. Share us with your friends. Check out the Freight Broker Basics course on our website if you're looking for an educational option. And make sure to check out our sponsors in the description box. That really helps support the channel and send good potential customers to some trusted products and services that we truly believe in. So our first question today, how often are brokers calling out on posted trucks to cover your freight? Is it only when you're desperate? How do you decide when to post versus call out? This is actually a question that I've gotten a lot with people, and I hate to say it depends, but it depends, right? And I think you've done a great job talking about who has the upper hand in a negotiation based on a call coming inbound versus a call being placed outbound. You want to just kind of paint that picture of what it's like to be a broker calling out versus a carrier calling a broker.
You will, on average, make less money and pay more for a truck if you call the truck versus the truck calling you. And again, without going too far into negotiations, there's this old adage of whoever speaks first loses. But what it really means is whoever talks first has a disadvantage because it tips the scale of who needs it more. And if I'm calling you and asking, hey, can your truck take this load? I'm already setting the tone that I need you more than you need me, which, again, as a percentage will play out where I will pay a little bit more because the dispatcher has the leverage and can give me whatever number they want and walk, right? Now, that is on average. There are instances where it doesn't play out in both directions the opposite way. But I would say, if you can cover your loads with inbound calls, you will make more money. But there's a caveat to that because if I'm calling, it depends on where you're calling. Because if I'm calling a posted truck on a load board, I'll probably pay more. But if I make an outbound call to a carrier that has run that load for me last week or run the load for me at any point in time in the past, I'm actually likely to pay less money because I've already negotiated the rate for that lane. We've already done business together. I've already been to the facility, both pickup and delivery. So there's less unknown risk to the driver on sitting there for 8 hours and not getting loaded. All of those things play into what you have to pay a driver on an individual transaction. The more information everyone has, the less risky it is. So if you're calling your own carrier base or trucks that have worked for your brokerage, or in the best case scenario, have run that specific lane for you recently, you actually probably pay less money. So what I would say is you should be doing both in most cases. First thing I'm doing is posting a load up to just hear where the market's at, whether I use that truck or not. But what I'm really doing is as soon as that load's posted, I'm going directly to my TMS and looking at when was the last time I ran it and who ran it. And I'm calling them while I'm getting calls inbound on my load posting.
And just about every TMS has that. I'm so glad you brought that up because that's what I wanted to hit on. And is just about every TMS out there has some sort of ability to do this. So we're in a TMS transition phase right now. So we're active in one and kind of playing around in the new one. But both of them have this ability. I just looked it up right now. An available load, I can hit on the button that tells me potential carriers that I might use, and it's going to look at who's hauled it in the past, how recently, how many times, has anybody listed this as a lane that they prefer to run, or they've called in interested in running this lane, and that data is only as good as what you put in there, right? So if you are not storing all of your data, or your carriers are, if they tell you they like a certain lane, if you're not saving that, you're doing yourself a disservice, right? And then your next best availability, let's say you're brand new and you don't have lane history in that one yet, is, well, there's tools out there that can help you see carriers that prefer that lane. You can, Highway is great. You can look at gen logs to see at their lane history where they've literally been seen, right? You can do things like
lane makers.
Yeah, I was gonna say lane makers on DAT. That's what I was looking for. how many times have they searched or posted in that lane in the past? Like those are huge. But then it comes down to like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with posting a load. And if like last ditch effort, like if you're making an outbound call, sometimes you have to, right? You might be in a place where you just, no one's going to call you because your MC is too new or you don't have a credit rating yet. And like, that's just part of being new in this industry is you're going to have to make outbound calls and build relationships the old school way. And with that comes a carrier wanting more money out of you because there's not a level of trust built yet. And that comes with time. So, but yeah, it's just kind of like order of operations. How would I do it? Who's hauled it for me in the past? Who do I know prefers this lane? Who wants to call me on this? And last effort is who can I call and ask about coverage for this? So
well, here's the old school way that I think works for newer brokers or newer brokerages, right? And I went through this with someone recently is, okay, just take this example of I have a customer that is jump ball freight, meaning like they give it to the cheapest person to give them a rate the quickest every Tuesday, right? But say the first 3 Tuesdays, I keep seeing this lane come up, right? Miami to Detroit. Every Tuesday, my customer sends me an email in the morning and that lane shows up. And then everybody posts the load up and then you get carriers that call in. Well, what I learned like doing this is I would write down the MCs of everybody I talked to, right? And I put the date on the top of my notepad, like, Tuesday, this date. And like I would have a list of those MCs. And then every Tuesday I was like too slow to get the load, right? But I started noticing patterns, meaning like the same carriers were posting their trucks every Tuesday, some of them, right? Like there's like a handful. So every Tuesday I'd look, I'm like, that MC looks familiar. Yeah, they were there last Tuesday. Oh, they were there 2 Tuesdays ago. Then the next step is, well, if my load keeps coming up every Tuesday and those carriers keep coming up every Tuesday and I'm too slow to get the carrier on the load to get the load, well, then guess what I'm going to do next Monday?
Yep.
I'm going to call the 5 carriers that I saw the last 3 Tuesdays and go, hey, you guys know if you're going to have a truck available tomorrow in Miami? You guys seem to have had one there recently. Yeah, we should. Okay, now I'm going to call my customer. Hey, I know you keep sending this load out every Tuesday. Out of curiosity, I got a driver that's going to be empty and available tomorrow morning. If you guys are going to have that, I can probably take it off your hands. Then that's one less thing for you to do tomorrow. Now I saved my customer time and got him a decent rate. I got my carrier who I saved time. They don't have to post their truck up the next day and work the load boards. And I got the load, right? So that's a scenario where you can make outbound calls to posted trucks and just use things you're seeing as patterns to your advantage. And it's like, okay, well, if you're too slow, just use time to your advantage and do it before everybody else does, right?
Yep. Absolutely. All right, next question. What are some red flags to look for in a carrier's DOT number or operations because of fraud or double brokering risk? So I'll say MC number is one that some folks bring up. They just look at like, hey, if their number is higher than, whatever, their numerical order when they're released, right? So it just is going to give you how old or young the MC is. But more so operations, what do you look out for, as far as like a fraud or double brokering risk? I would say some of the clear and obvious ones are like, do they have reports against them? And regardless of what tool you're using, if it's Highway or if it's Carrier Assure, RMIS, Carrier 411, My Carrier Portal, right? Like there's ways of carriers just being blatantly flagged for whatever, but the other stuff that you can look at, like look at the equipment that you can verify that they have. Does it match or not match with the load that they're trying to book with you, right? If they don't have any reefers and they're trying to book a reefer, like red flag. If they never operate, like here's what I love about Genlogs is like Genlogs literally can observe images and locations of these trucks. So we know their equipment type, we know the size, we know their location and the history and the patterns and trends, right? And I think Ryan did a great job with you a couple of weeks ago on this, is if a carrier has like 1 or 2 trucks and they've been verified, through inspection data, through Genlogs cameras or whatever source you're using, right? And they're always in the same like southeast area of the U.S. And now they want to pick up a load for you in California. Well, they don't have anything out there. they never had anything out there. And if you go a step further and you're doing like ELD tracking through a certain service, you can kind of use these tools to supplement one another. And those are what I would say your red flags are. And there's a ton of other subjective ones. And there's like, you could set the rules in these different compliance programs, but it's like, do their inspections to fleet size, is the ratio, is it off? Like they're not getting inspected as much as a carrier that claims to have 50 trucks should be, right? Things like that. Those are like the blatantly obvious ones to me. What would you say are some of the other common ones, or just like other red flags to look out for? Maybe the rates would be true.
Are they running the same type of equipment as your load? That's like another red flag I've seen that's overlooked. I mean, it's hard for me to pick one because I kind
There's
of
so many.
look at all of them now and I look at them like comprehensively. I mean, in a lot of the software I use, I'm looking at like their IP tracking history. Are they logging in often or from the same places? For sure looking at the email domain if it's an email. And like a lot of times I will literally copy everything after the @ sign in the email and just put it into a browser to see if the website comes up correctly or if it doesn't. Making a phone call, I would say, is probably the two lowest hanging fruits are gen logs for visibility. I look at gen logs to see if they're currently running. Are they running those lanes they're asking about with their trucks? And the second is I make a phone call to the FMCSA phone number, but I'm also looking at my software. Were there recent changes to the FMCSA phone number? And if there were, I call the older phone number. Like that is probably the lowest effort one that gives you the highest return for the effort, I guess.
Yep. Yeah, and this is all something that like, when you build out your tech stack, you've got to decide based on the amount of control and decision making or lack thereof that your team has, what level of software or what types of software and how much should you be spending on that? Because there's going to be a balance. Like if it's just you and you are very confident in your abilities, you don't have to put a whole lot of guardrails in place because you're going to manually check this stuff out. But if you've got like a bunch of new folks that are booking trucks, yeah, I'm definitely going to want to have like rules in place and basically things that make it impossible for them to book a truck that could potentially be fraudulent. So like we've got agents at Pierce, right? So we've evolved this over the years, but like a carrier can't even get a rate confirmation sent unless the carrier passes our rules, right? And then further, they can't even view or accept the rate confirmation until they go through a multi-factor authentication process to prove that they are the right person. So there's always going to be like, the scammers are always going to evolve too, and take a step in a direction that makes us vulnerable. But like you just got to keep your processes and your tools and the education of this stuff like up to date. So yeah, it's crazy, man. I still like kind of miss the old days when like this wasn't the number one issue.
I definitely miss those older days.
But, all right, last question here. It's like 4 questions in one, but the woman asked, I'm curious to hear from other broker owners about your experience working with or hiring freight agents. A few quick questions. What documents or agreements do you give new agents when onboarding? How do you handle commissions and payout timing? Do you train new agents or stick with experienced ones? And any lessons learned that you wish you knew sooner? So I did give a brief response to her on, I think this was our Facebook group, but I basically said like, number one, like, so I go through, I had this conversation yesterday with somebody who was actually considering bringing an agent into their company. And I said, like, I've got an entire like SOP that I've built out for Pierce when it comes to agent vetting and onboarding. And I have talked with, one of the things I love about like good leadership is that they're not afraid to talk to their competition and kind of collaborate. Like that's what I love about TIA. But I have talked with like folks at Armstrong, Global Trans, LDI, like other larger agent-based companies, and just been like, and other companies too, and just been like, hey, we're getting hammered with the same agent fraud that you guys are. Like, if we don't if we don't share the risks that are out there with each other, you're just kind of like letting that bad actor just continue to do what they're doing just under someone else's company.
Yep.
So, but like I go through like, yeah, we do a full-fledged in-depth contract. We do a background check. We thoroughly vet their experience and their book of business. I want to make sure.
What does that entail? I
So,
want you to
okay.
explain to people what vetting or verifying their book of business
Yeah,
looks
so
like, 'cause we
I
get
did this
question
with
a lot.
somebody this week with we had one of our recruiters was bringing a new guy in, and he's like, yeah, he's like, I'm a little unsure. He's like, I feel good about it, but like, he's like, what else do you want to do? And we went through like, and you could use like Zoom Info or Apollo or like any of these like data sites to like something besides LinkedIn or a resume, like to tie that person to a different company, right? I've even gone as far as like, if someone's like, hey, I work at this other company and I just don't really, we're having like difference of opinions and I want to look for a new home. Like you can even say like, all right, log into your DAT account, go to like your profile and screenshot showing me your account with your like your contact phone number and your name and your affiliation with that MC, and it's got to have like the date and time on your computer in the screenshot. Like that proves to me that yeah, you have an account with DAT at this brokerage right now. Pay stubs, commission reports that are generated from the TMS. And don't be afraid to run them through AI and tell ChatGPT, like, does this look doctored? Does this look altered? Because I've caught people who, like, I didn't notice it, but ChatGPT's like, could see that there was different layering on the PDF that showed it was an original PDF that had then certain text added into it, right? Or it noticed that the dimensions of like the image of the logo of the company was slightly stretched and didn't match the official one on the website. Things like that. Background check for sure. You could do reference checks. You could do, I mean, the more you do, the better it is. And like most legitimate agents now, they understand that like, they're going to be asked to verify certain things and like, they're not going to balk at it if they're legitimate. But if they're lying to you about their book of business or lying to you about where they're currently working or lying to you about even having any experience in the industry, they're not going to be able to get through those checks that you have. So those are some of like the vetting things that I do. And then like, just what does your gut tell you when you talk to this person? If you're asking the right questions about, their book of business and how they do things, are they answering them in a way that makes you feel comfortable or in a way that kind of like raises the hairs on the back of your neck? Like anyone should know their book of business in and out, like down to like, their contact's name at a certain shipper and the lanes that they run and when they are into commodities. And you could do an NDA, right? If they're not comfortable sharing that stuff with you. But I literally had a dude that was like, yeah, we do like $4 million a year. And he like refused to tell me his customers' names. He's like, why would I tell you that? I'm like, well, like if, I'm like, if there's any contracts we have to get to approve or credit lines we need to have, or like if there's like, credit lines you need, like I would love to like pre-vet this for your sake so you don't make a decision and then you find out we can't work with them. Right. Like, I'm not telling you my customers' names. And I was like, okay, like we're not a good fit then. Like I don't know what to tell you, but we're just not a good fit. So
here's the two other big ones I've seen where somebody comes over and has a book of business, but they haven't been in the industry for 6 or 8 months. And they think they're just going to call those. Yeah. And they're like, oh, well, I know these people. I've known them for so long. Like they always told me if I went and got an agency, like they'd give me loads. And it's like, I'm not saying that like that's not true and that person didn't tell you that, but like it's also not just up to that person to probably get you onboarded to be able to give you freight. There's someone else moving that freight. Like that never, from what I've seen, ever works out. Or the other one is
I'll tell you this, I have like less than a 25% success rate on that. And I usually, if I move forward with it, there's going to be like, forward me an email from your customer, or like, let's do a 3-way call with them. And I just want to introduce this brokerage and make sure like and if they can't do that, then they're overconfident in their book, they're clearly overconfident in their book of business or that relationship.
Or the other one is somebody wants to come over and bring their book of business, but they worked in a pod model and they were the one booking the loads, weren't the one that had the relationship with the
Yep.
customer. And they're like, oh, we did like 3.5 million with them. And they're like, oh, like tell me a little bit about how you got onboarded with them. Like, how did you prospect them? And they're like, oh, well, it was a house account that our brokerage had for 20 years. And it's like, okay, well, so you were covering their loads and scheduling appointments, and your belief is that like all of that business is going to go with you when you had like a very small portion of the relationship. Well, I think we can. And it's like, okay, to your point, well, let's jump on a call and see if they're interested in being able to move it over, because again, I don't want you to leave your job to come here and then it doesn't come with you. Now you're out both, right?
Yep. So some of the other questions that she had is, how do you handle commissions and payout timing? This just depends on like, if you don't have if you're just looking at like a couple agents, like it's probably going to be like just a business decision. Most of the larger models are going to pay upon invoice. But you could do like pay when you receive payment. You'd probably just look at their like if it's just your first agent and the customer pays slowly, but you want to be able to offer them a credit line. Well, I'm not paying commission out until we receive payment then, if I know they're going to pay in 50 days. But if, so that's a consideration you can have. The percentage amount that you're going to pay out, depends on what are you providing for them? What are they doing versus what are you doing? Are you giving them free access to software? Are they paying for their own software? There's like no like doctrinal way to do it. There's a lot of options. And then experience versus new. I wouldn't personally go down the new agent route. I'd always go experience. Like I feel like someone that's like, oh, I'm just gonna hire like 20 people and see who works. Like that's you just not wanting to do sales yourself. So what I've always found is that like someone who's got a good book of business, the reason that they'd be a good fit for your company is usually it's like a cultural fit. Like the business model makes sense. They enjoy the way that you guys operate as a company. And it makes their life and their job easier than wherever they're currently at. And then lessons learned, she asked about. I tell this to a lot of people, is that like building out an agent program is not as easy as you might think. It is very difficult. So much to a point, I literally was talking to somebody yesterday who was looking at bringing on their first 2 agents. And I said, if you do this right, and again, they were like, yeah, these are 2 guys that like, they got a book of business. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, what did they do last month? And he's like, well, they actually haven't worked with them in like a year. And I'm like, so they don't have a book of business. I'm like, you'll learn this stuff over time when you deal with more and more agents. But I'm like, there is a lot. It almost, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is, right? It should be very difficult, but not impossible. Very difficult to bring on your first agent, because you're having to sell that person on coming to work within your organization and to trust you that you're going to pay them and that you're going to treat their customers and your carriers the right way. All of that. And it gets to a point where like the companies that have the agent model, there are people whose sole job is to support the agent model, right? They're not brokering freight. They're not doing accounting. They're not doing claims. They're literally in a role that's like agent support, agent development, agent recruiting in some cases. And that's, that it's something you have to really build and scale slowly at the right pace. And kind of like we talked about on the last podcast about like growing your business, like growing an agent model is like slow and steady. Like I remember when we started our agent model at Pierce, there was a couple agents that were already there over like, from a decade or more ago, but like it was started as just me. And there's like 4 of us now that just solely support the agent model outside of any other back office. So yeah, a lot goes into it. It's not just a quick way to add a sales rep. These are people that are going to represent your authority and your reputation. That could like tank your business and like with one bad email or one bad phone call to the wrong person. So
I would say this. Like I've done both.
So you've been an agent, you've had agents.
I've been an agent, I've hired them, and I've been a W-2. And ownership. So like all of the positions, right? I think it is easier, faster, and less risk to just prospect and get more business yourself than to build an agent model, right? Now, in the long term, I think it makes sense to build the agent model out. And your point of view of like, it's slow, it's steady, but once you have enough of them over enough time, the business becomes less risky because it's not dependent on one person. So in the long term, I
The
think it
agent
makes
pool becomes
sense.
like a book of business in itself. The same way that you
Correct.
can diversify
And
your
it
freight
takes
book of business.
years, even when you're good at it, even when you have name recognition, even when your brokerage has name recognition, even when you have tenure in the industry, it still takes years, but like it is very beneficial over a longer time frame to do that. But if you're really going to do it, I think you need to be selling yourself, growing your book every day, every week, and then little by little spending a little bit more time prospecting agents just like you do shippers, and never stop prospecting shippers,
Yep.
because now you're really growing, and little by little you'll find that one good agent that you add to the mix. At first maybe one a year, right? Maybe one every year and a half, and then maybe you get 2 years later, right? Like it is a slow growth but becomes more stable over a longer period of time. It
Yeah.
has never been the faster solution that I've ever seen in any situation that I've ever come across.
Here's what's interesting is like the demand to build out an agent program is very high because I think a lot of companies see the value in it. And a buddy of mine I worked with years ago, he built an agent program out for a company. He basically had like a headhunter that like pulled him from a very like $1 billion plus company and was like, hey, these guys want to build out an agent model. You should talk to them. So like he legitimately like takes like he had this great job, leaves it to take a slight pay cut with the potential to earn more over time to build out an agent program for a company, a smaller brokerage. And like the owner just like 5.5 months in was like, yeah, we're gonna stop doing this, and like laid him off. And he's like I didn't even like want this job. Like a headhunter brought it to me
Yep.
and it seemed like a great opportunity. And I like thought about it for a long time before I decided to do it. And he called me and he's like, dude, he's like, this just happened. And I was like, you know what? I was like, talk to these two people. I said, I guarantee you'll have like multiple offers to do this at other companies. And he literally did. Like in 24 hours had multiple like reputable companies offering him like well over 6 figures starting as a salary plus commission to come in and build out a program. And it's like there's not a lot of people that are out there that have done it successfully and can do it and can manage it, compared to the amount of companies that would love to be able to lean into that model. So that's why I always tell people like it is a job in and of itself to build and manage that business model. It's kind of like the reason like when you worked at TQL, you probably had a person or a team that did new hire training, right? Was there like someone whose main job was to put you through like your first week's like orientation, like this is what freight brokering is, and like dedicated to just training people on what what the job is and all of that? Was there anything
They
like
have
that?
dedicated recruiters for sure in every office. They did have those people when I was hired. 2 years in, they got rid of the program. And
Okay.
if I remember the numbers, it was a lot of money that they saved when they got rid of it. It was like $30 million a year or something, if I remember, that like they saved by dropping the program. And what they found were they didn't see a drop in performance because the way they train people is they basically plug new hires directly into somebody that's experienced, where they've what we were talking about on the podcast, like physically sit next to somebody
Yeah.
plugged in, listen to hearing and seeing and watching everything that is happening.
Yeah. That's a good point. But yeah, good questions. Keep them coming our way and we'll continue to answer them. Final thoughts, Ben.
You believe you can or believe you can't. You're right.
And until next time, go Bills.